I think about our missionaries. I think about Dick Brogdon. He is serving, now he's in Egypt working with a ministry there, but originally he was in Kenya. And we thought we were going to buy him a four-wheel drive vehicle through Speed the Light. And Dick said, that's great that you would buy me a vehicle. I'm honored. He said, but the problem is if you buy me a vehicle, the distance from point A to point B in Kenya is so far. There's no gas stations in between. The roads are really rough. He said, it's actually more dangerous for us because people will they will wait along the roadside and they'll try to stop our vehicle because they know we have to carry gas with us. So they'll try to stop our vehicle, steal our gas, perhaps steal our vehicle, perhaps even try to kill us. He said it's more dangerous. He said, would you consider buying us camels? He said, if you buy us camels, we can fill those suckers up with water and we can go for days. And I don't know if he used the word suckers. I just like saying the word suckers. But anyway, he said that we provided, I think for the first time in the history of Speak the Light, we provided camels as transportation. And a famine hit the region, and they didn't know how they were going to feed the people. I talked to Dick Brogdon in 2009. I said, Dick, is this story true? He said, yes, Chet. He affirmed it. It's true. He said, a famine hit the region. He said, I'm watching the people that I'm trying to reach who are literally on the verge of starvation. And he said, I didn't know what else to do. He said, there was no food for the people. Even if we had money to buy the food, there was no food to buy. He said, we did the only thing that we knew to do. We slaughtered the camels, they cooked the meat, and they fed the meat to the people. I think it's the first time in the history of Speak the Light that 2 Speak the Light vehicles have been eaten, which is powerful. This stuff. But the point is this, he did not have to give up his transportation. He chose to do so because he understood the value of the people that God had called him to reach. I think about stories of sacrifice. I think about our missionaries. I think about young people across this nation. And I could sit here all day long and tell you stories about the kid who went to camp and he went back home because he felt like God had told him to sell his computer and give the money to Speed the Light. And so he went back home, put his computer on Craigslist. In the space of just a couple of hours, he had sold it for the amount that he listed it for, $600, and he gave the proceeds to Speed the Light. I think about a young man I met. In fact, I was preaching in a church, and I didn't know this young man was there that day. And as I'm preaching, they said, he was here a few minutes ago. And here's a young man who, a couple of years ago, I think it was a year and a half ago, he decided, I'm going to sell my four-wheeler, and I'm going to give the proceeds to Speed the Light. And that same young man last year, he said, you know what, I've got a Galaxy tablet. I don't really need it all that much. He sold it, and he gave the proceeds to Speed the Light. There are young people all over this nation who understand that I can give and not just get. I think about Andrew. Andrew was 15, 16 years old when he was diagnosed with cancer. He's from Minnesota, where they say Minnesota, and we get to go there quite a bit. And Andrew was diagnosed with cancer. They told him you don't have long to live, and that's a pretty tough thing to get as a teenager. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation contacted Andrew, said we'd like to do something special for you, maybe send you to Disney World or something like that. Andrew said, that's awesome that you would do that for me, but he thought a little bit about it, and he said, you know what, would you allow me to take the money that you would take for that trip, and would you allow me to give it to a ministry called Speak the Light? And so the Make-A-Wish Foundation people said, we've never had a request like this, we don't know if we can do it or not. And they checked it out, found out they could do it. It was a few months later that Andrew was a little bit frailer. He was in a wheelchair. The cancer was attacking his body. And yet in that wheelchair that night, the Make-A-Wish Foundation presented a check to Andrew. It was written to him, or it was written to Speak the Light on Andrew's behalf. And it was for $5,000. Here's a young man who'd only been saved for less than a year. But in that less than a year's time, he got what many people struggle a lifetime to get. It's not about us. Transformation happens when we begin to realize how God can use us to impact the people that are around us. See, Andrew kept an online blog. I didn't know that at the time. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, I ran across this blog online. I was kind of searching for information on him. And he wrote a poem, and he posted it on the blog, and this is just a snippet of that poem. He says, at a passing glance, there's nothing to me, but there's more than meets the eye. I see the world in a much different view than the average person passing by. And I wish everyone could see the world through the eye of a dying man, because maybe, just maybe, people would live and see the world like I can. September 25th, 2009, 3:42 p.m., Central Standard Time. His mom writes on that blog, many of you have been wondering why we have not updated Andrew's journal. It is because Andrew did not want us to. Andrew earned his wings today. He went peacefully with family by his side. He was 16 years old. I share that story with you because I want you to understand something. if we give young people, if we give students an opportunity, if we tell them they can change the world, they will. I think a lot of times we don't think they can, so we tell them they can't. But let's give them an opportunity. See, I was driving down the road and I had an email notice on my phone. I looked at it and I realized it was an email that indicated that Andrew had passed away. I'll never forget that moment. I started to tear up when I pictured in my mind what heaven must be like when Andrew walked on the streets of gold the first time. One of the angels recognized that he was there, and he's like tapping his friend, and he just stands up quietly, and I just picture this, this applause, and I picture all the other angels begin to pitch in, and, they're all standing. I know I'm a little melodramatic, I don't care, it's my moment, and I'm picturing this kid who gave sacrificially so that people around the world could hear the message that he had heard, and I realized in that moment, he got it. It's a tension for all of us. Sacrifice? I mean, come on. It's a tough thing in the world in which we live. And yet we understand and we realize that it is the heart of God. It is the heart of Christ. I'm reminded of 1 Chronicles 21. You remember the story where David numbers the people of Israel? God's not pleased with what he's done. And so David falls on his knees, he repents, but God still sends a message and he tells him there's punishment for what you've done. And he tells David you have 3 choices. Number 1, 3 years of famine throughout the land of Israel. Number 2, 3 months in which the armies that surround you overtake and overpower you. Number 3, you can have 3 days in which the sword of the Lord, the plague of the Lord, will be against the people of Israel. He's devastated. But he says, you know what? I choose number 3 because maybe God will have mercy. And the Bible tells us that it's a tragic day in the history of Jerusalem. 70,000 people die. People all around the city are crying out for mercy and hope and healing. And God hears their cries. And David falls to his knees again as the king. And he says, God, don't let these people suffer anymore for what I've done. And God sends a message to David. And he tells him to go upon the threshing floor of Arana. And he says, I want you to build an altar. And I want you to offer a sacrifice on the altar. And so David approaches this man who owns this plot of ground, this threshing floor. And he says, Arana, I need this ground. I need to build an altar and offer a sacrifice here. Arana looks at him and he says, I can't sell this to you. You're the king. He said, I want to give it to you for free. In fact, I'll give you not just the ground. I'll give you the oxen for the burnt offering. I'll give you the wheat for the grain offering. I'll give it all to you for free. I don't know what your response would have been, but my response would have been something like this. I can feel the presence of the Lord, and I'm going to give my blessing right now. I mean, I've been pretty excited. Amen. But not David. Here's what he says. I insist on paying the full price. I will not take for the Lord what is yours, or sacrifice a burnt offering that costs me nothing. This blows me away, because I have never in my life offered to pay full price for anything. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I'm Mr. Coupon guy, I'm Mr. Find a Deal, I'm Mr. Find a Bargain. In fact, I want to share something really quickly this morning as I bring this to a close. I really enjoy testosterone-driven sporting events. I love football, I love mixed martial arts. The other night I was watching UFC and I was like, man, I'd love to be in there beating somebody. There's something about, golf and basketball and, just manly stuff, Not that every one of those sports is manly, but you get what I'm saying. And, but there's something about me I want to share with you this morning. It doesn't seem to be too testosterone driven. See, not only do I like sports, but I also love shopping. In fact, not just any shopping, I love bargain shopping. I believe that bargain shopping is a testosterone-driven sporting event. How many of you know what I'm talking about? When you walk into a store and you see signs of 70% off and 40% off of the 70, your heart starts to palpitate just a little bit faster. I walked into an Old Navy one time, they had Western-style long-sleeve metal button shirts for $1.97. I walked up to that clearance rack that day and, I was shaking. I don't know what you do and then you might can find a bargain, but I began to pray, oh God, you know that God, it's not our money, it's yours. And we want to be careful about how we spend our money. Because see, normally if you like something on the clearance rack, it's not your size. So you have to pray, oh God, let it be my size. Lord, let it be my size. And I turned that tag over that day. It's a true story. I'm not embellishing this. I thought I heard angels sing because it was my size. I'm very passionate about bargain shopping. I walked into a place called Value City in West Virginia. They had this suit on a rack. And I don't know if you can see this in the back, but it's called a seersucker suit. It's real thin, white and blue lines. It's a linen material, spring suit. You can probably wear it anytime in Florida because it's warm all the time. But anyway, I looked at this suit and I thought to myself, I think I can pull that off. I'll buy me some white shoes and a white linen tie and a white shirt, you know, wear some docksiders or something. I thought I can pull this off. But the problem was it was $59, which in my opinion was too much to pay for the suit. But it was on a rack at Value City that day, and it was blue. And blue meant 90%. I just was like, oh Lord. I had me a Church of God moment, you know. So I did the math real quick and I realized $59, 90% off, $6. Now, I'll tell you, that was about 8 years ago. I've never worn it one time. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You're like, you've got some jeans you've never worn, they're in the closet. So, you say, Chet, what are you trying to tell us? What's it have to do with the message? See, I think sometimes this is the way we approach God. Oh, the pants just fell off, but that's good. I think sometimes this is the way we approach God. I think sometimes this is the way we approach giving. What are you saying? God, send revival, pour out your spirit on us. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn for their... God, can we maybe get like a Bible revival? One that, you know, doesn't cost us very much, but we get all the salvations. And how many of you know we realize that if it's going to have any value, it costs us greatly. And sometimes we're like, God, pour out your spirit around the world. Missions works. Let's see salvations occurring and provide for missionaries. But Lord, ask someone else to give. Does that make sense? We realize in that moment, we have to answer a question as I close. The question is this: is it worth the cost? Because see, I've learned that if it's worth the cost, I will pay the price. If I find better value in it, I'll pay the price. I think about Convoy Football.